My name is Adrian Guggisberg. I'm actually leading the service business of Motion at ABB. Motion means for us, this is a business where we focus on electrical motors and variable speed drives which are controlling such motors. At ABB, we are actually from a market share point of view globally the number one in this business. And obviously we are serving a significant installed base across the globe, helping the customers really to take advantage of this equipment. First, maybe quickly, what are electrical motors and variable speed drives, to give you a bit of a sense what we are talking about. First of all, I think, you see everywhere something moving in this world. Being it, if you are sitting in an air-conditioned room, some air is moving. If you turn on the tap, some water is moving. If you take a train or a tram, is moving. If you go to a park and you go on a ride, it's moving. Everywhere where something is moving, there is most likely an electrical motor behind which keeps this moving. And if you take it a bit from a relevance point of view, you can say about 45% of the electrical energy produced around the globe is converted by electrical motors into movement. So it's everywhere. And what we do as a service division, we help customers which have installed motors and drives to help them that these drives and motors work across the entire life cycle. Like you are bringing your car to the dealership, maybe once a year or maybe after a certain mileage, you would have also some services on this type of equipment. That's what we do. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what we say and what probably we all experience is we say the world is going electric. You see a lot of conversion of combustion engines to electrical movement. And there is a good reason for that. I think we need to go towards more a carbon neutral society, a carbon neutral world. In order to do that, we are replacing combustion engines with electrical engines. I think that's really the main driver for what happens. On top of that, what you get is also if you use electrical motion for moving something, you have a complete different level of controllability and a complete different level of efficiency. So it means how much energy you put in and how much energy you get out. The second or the latter one, I think the energy efficiency, this is really what drives right now the business significantly. If I take quickly a bit of a global picture, you go to Europe and we all know there is an energy crisis right now. So there is a high focus on saving energy just to survive. If we go to other places, we see a lot of focus towards carbon neutrality. In order to reduce the carbon footprint, you need to save energy. So take more for less, more or less. So that are the big trends, what we would see. Sure, again, if I take a little bit the relevance, 45% of electrical energy produced, consumed or converted by motors into motion. What we see out of this 45% of installed base, if you go to industry, by the way, it's about 70% of the energy industry consumes is converted into motion. Now, if you look a little bit into how this is used, how it is done, let me first quickly introduce what it means to have variable speed. If you drive your car, you have two mechanisms to control the speed. Like all of us, you would use the accelerator and push. The more you push, the faster it goes. The less you push, the less it goes. There's another method. You can push through the accelerator and you use the brake to control the speed. Now you would say, Adrian, you're stupid. Nobody's doing that. But that's basically the way 80% of the motors are controlled. You put a valve behind a motor, you put a damper behind the motor, and that's the way you control the process today. Replacing this by using a variable speed drive is like controlling the process or the speed with an accelerator instead of the brake. So what we see is globally there is an energy saving potential of 10% of the total consumed energy could be saved if we do this smarter. Now think how many kind of plants you could save which need to be added in order to produce the energy, or where customers would have a plant and how much efficiency they could increase by using the energy in a more wise way. That's where we play and help exactly towards what you said. Yeah, I think we are actually for many years in this business where we would see, okay, we can provide high efficiency solution. It's also one of our value propositions. Now I would say the last 2 years, it really got a different flavor. because I think sustainability is rising on the agenda everywhere, with most companies, also me just traveling here around in the region. I think more or less every company talks about this. You know, how do we get more sustainable operation? How do we reduce our carbon footprint of our operations? This goes through all the industries, from water utilities to oil and gas industry. Everybody is looking into this, so high attention on this. If we look a little bit on some of the success cases, maybe I pick one, you know, just an example I really like. In Sweden, we have a company which is active in the forest. What they say their asset is the forest, but they do a lot of manufacturing around the forest. So they're using the wood for paper, for carbon, and so on. They're completely carbon neutral. But what they do is they use a lot of data in order to optimize their energy consumption and continuously reduce their energy consumption. It's really a master example how they do this. And it just shows the potential of doing things. Absolutely. The 10% is just the average, you know. And now if you look a little bit, let's take a pumping station. Typically, you know, water pumping, if you would pump with a fixed speed, there is a high potential to save way more than 10%. And it depends all on the process and the demand. You know, I would say typically whenever you have anything which needs a bit of a controlled demand, variable speed will help you to save tremendous amount of energy, way more than the 10%. So this can be in the range of 70%, you know, up to what you can save easily in some of the applications. Now, there are a couple of things which go wrong in the industry today. The first thing what goes wrong is typically people put margins in designs. It's like, again, I'm taking a bit of the car example. You buy a car and you buy a 300 horsepower motor, but actually you never need the 300 horsepower. Now, this 300 horsepower, even if you drive with much less power, is consuming more energy than if you would buy one which fits to your need. Now, if you build a pumping station, there is no point of sizing a pumping station the double size of what you really need. Now, the pumping station such might not be double size, but the motor inside the pumping station easily has 20% too high capacity because people put margin on top of margins. That's the first thing. The second thing what goes wrong is very often people are not aware what is possible, what technologies are there, what could be done. Now, there are standards which regulate certain things. For example, for motors, we call IE standards, IE1 to IE5. A typical standard, what you see today, is an IE3, which gives you the requirement to reach a certain level of efficiency. However, practically possible is IE5, which is a much higher standard, and you could save quite a lot of energy if you consider this type of a standard during the design phase, which doesn't happen because people are not aware. So I would say that these are two major things, you know, to consider. Us being as a market leader in this. As a market leader, you have one big advantage. As a market leader, actually your business is bigger than anybody else. And we can actually reinvest way more money in R&D, research, and the development side. So we are really at the forefront of technology. So when others are trying to create an IE5, we are working on IE6, which doesn't exist yet. So we are trying to be all the time a step ahead. That is one thing, you know, how we push the boundaries. The second thing what we also have is way more access to customers because we have a much larger customer base. And with that, actually, we have also the chance to access or to educate customers and help them to take better advantage of the solutions. Now, the one thing which comes there into play is digitalization. I'm sure you have talked also in the magazine a lot about digitalization in the past. And digitalization for me means a lot about decision making. You know, instead of kind of intuitive decision making, start to make decisions based on data. Use facts, and the decisions get much better. Now, if we take energy efficiency quickly as an example also here, you know, there are 300 million of installed motors around the world which are by far not as efficient as they should be. But it's very hard for people to know, okay, where are the 10 motors I really should think about doing something different? I could replace them. I could maybe add a variable speed drive. I could maybe make some modernization, which helps me to save energy. I could operate them in a different way. You don't know. That's one of the big problems, what is out there. And in the past, when we were looking at this, we would do an energy appraisal, which is more of a consultative type of a service. But what you do there, you can look at the largest equipment, but you cannot go to the hundreds and thousands of small motors because it's way too cumbersome, and the effort you need to put in manually to work on it is in no relation to the benefit. But now with digital solutions, what we have developed is also some plug-and-play type of solutions, which is more of a B2C type of experience. Make it very easy. You don't need to be an engineer to deploy these solutions. Very easy, attach it to a motor and you collect data. After about 3 to 6 months, based on how this is operated, we can tell you what is the saving potential. What would be the return on investment of different alternatives, how you could upgrade your solution. So that's one thing which really helps there to make progress. I think the awareness is not there yet, and this is why we as ABB, we have started, we call it the energy efficiency movement. The energy efficiency movement, the intention of that when we started is saying, we need to raise the awareness. And that's not about for us selling equipment, it's general awareness building. And meanwhile, I think more than 100 companies have joined us in the energy efficiency movement. It has nothing to do with ABB. It's not just we were the starters, the initiators of that. Competitors of us are joining, customers, suppliers. And what we try collectively to do is to raise the awareness about where could we save energy. So we are, for example, also working right now on a cross-industrial type of top 10 tips for customers or for the operators to look at what could you do? Where could you save energy in an easy way? So these type of things we have started, it's really about awareness building. Now, if I bridge quickly into the region here, I think what is really encouraging is there is a lot of attention here on driving towards carbon-free society, carbon-neutral operations. And people are well aware that we need to do things different. And there is a big openness to think about how can we use digital solutions to help make better decisions? How can we identify the potential? How can we do that in a better way? So what I really see here is very much the mindset of being data-driven is very high. Let me answer this in two ways. First, before going directly to the question, let me maybe add one of the big challenge. What we see is, while we see actually a raising awareness and a high commitment of the executive level, the managerial level of our customers to drive this, I think the operational level is not yet there. So very often we see a gap in what the company C-level wants to achieve versus what the operations is doing. And I think this is something where we need to help our customers to bring everyone on an equal level, then things are happening. If that's not happening, there are always the concern about, okay, if I do that, do I add a risk into my operation? Will it still work the way it should? And people are not executing. We call it this, I think from psychology, is the rule of 4. Where one says, negative is 4 times stronger than positive. So you get an upside in energy savings, but there is a downside of maybe I'm adding a risk and I'm then on the hook because the performance is not good. So people are risk adverse, generally. But coming back to your question, what are we doing? Especially through the service business, which I'm leading, we are in regular contact with the customers. And there it's really also on us to show them the benefits. To make it transparent. Because as you rightly said, often we would present the technical solution, the what can we do, but not so much the impact. And I think it's so critical to quantify the impact. The impact in terms of monetary impact, the saving of the energy, the impact in terms of the energy savings, how much less energy you consume, because basically that helps also on the infrastructure. And then thirdly, the impact on the CO2 savings. As I said earlier, I think there is a clear trend towards more electrifying everything. So what we would see, there are trends that, today you may have a remote, some remote places which are equipment is driven by a gas turbine. People would look into electrifying this and have the main drivers electrical to get things carbon neutral. On the other hand, you see also way more demand in terms of, if you move into a new building, as an example, you're going to have a complete different level of comfort in terms of the cooling and heating than if you would stay in an old building. And all of that needs electrification. All of that will need some movement. Something is moving, water, air, you name it, So high demand on that. And then also if you think about transport, transport electrification in transport is absolutely raising up. I mean, we all read about, electrical vehicles. In some countries, this is really already growing nicely. So I think that the demand is just coming naturally right now, because we need to transition from a kind of fossil type of world towards way more a carbon neutral world. Now, saying that, we will use for many, many years still fossils, but we need to do it in a very efficient and optimized way. Burning it in a car is not the same as if you operate, for example, a gas-fired power plant. This runs on a complete different efficiency point. What we clearly see in this region is water, I think, is so important. And water is not naturally available. I grew up in a country, Switzerland, in the middle of Europe. Water comes out of the mountains and the hills. And obviously, the supply needs to be organized, but it's a complete different starting point. Here, water is rare, so you need desalination plants, you need the distribution of the water, and so on. So it's a high demand also here for electrification in order to move that water, to make it available where it's needed. So I think that's one of the areas where we as ABB, we are supporting the local industry very much. Or another big topic here would be the whole cooling, district cooling. I think there is construction places around here, a lot of air and liquid movement for district cooling. Also here, you need electrical motion in order to do that. And certainly last but not least, is a significant demand also in the oil and gas industry, which is also here, especially if we go to Abu Dhabi, is the motor of the industry. So I thought there is very high demand. And for us, it's maybe also to give you there a sense, for us, it's very much a commitment also to stay local in this business. Because what we see is our customers, they buy the equipment, but they are not, by buying this equipment, you do not have the solution. You need somebody to support you across the entire life cycle of the equipment. And what we see is sometimes also some of our competitors, they do not invest as much as we do to have a local presence, have a local competence. And for them, the job is done when they have sold the equipment. But that's not sustainable. That's actually not the way things should be done. You really need to make sure that the customers get over the entire life cycle, the benefit. Coming back to the question, what you just had, I think that there are two things. First, if you look at the equipment, yes, there are specific requirements. They are not unique only just for this region. We would see that in other places as well. What is very special is, for example, ambient temperature range. You do not have the same requirements in other places on the world. Now, what we do is, typically when we design products, we design platforms of products which can be configured to the specific needs of being it a region or even a customer. And that would be an example of what we do here for this region. So we are using mainstream products, mainstream platforms, but we would configure based on the needs. That's the first thing. The second one was about the knowledge and the skills. And yes, absolutely, we invest into the people's knowledge here. And there are three levels what we do. The one thing is for our own people. The second one for our partners. So we have service partners which we certify to do some work on behalf of us. And then the third thing is about our customers, owners of equipment, to enable them to do the right thing. The way we do that is there are different ways of doing it. Certainly the straightforward way is we have a training center here where we have people going through, where we can really also demonstrate things. We have also equipments for hands-on training and so on. That's one step. Another step is also for some special trainings, we bring people back to the places where we engineer things or where we design things. Then they get access really to in-depth knowledge. This is especially for our service people and service experts relevant. And then there are also certainly these days we are using a lot of digital trainings, and we take advantages there of new technologies. Right now, for example, we are testing also this kind of virtual reality type of solutions in order to help people get an easier way to learn and get familiar with things. So that's one thing. But important is that we keep locally present a high level of competence. You need to have critical mass. And that's something what we see is, again, I was referring before a little bit to some of our competitors which don't pay so much attention. If you have one person in one place, it's like nobody. It's just not sustainable, the knowledge. So you need to keep a sustainable knowledge. What we do here, for example, for our variable speed drives business, we have a workshop. And within this workshop, we do reconditioning services, we do repair services, and then you have automatically already a wider base of people which have a certain level of knowledge, and you get also naturally a talent pipeline to take up bigger roles within the region.